The clinic fell quiet after 6, when the last receptionist locked the front door and left me alone with the hum of the air conditioning and one final appointment. Mr. Rossi. Always Mr. Rossi, though I'd stopped believing that was his real name months ago. I checked my reflection in the treatment room mirror, tucking a strand of dark hair behind my ear. My scrubs were wrinkled from a long day of deep tissue work and spinal adjustments, and I could feel the familiar ache in my own shoulders from hunching over patients. 12 hours of back-to-back appointments. I should have been exhausted. Instead, my heart was racing. 3 months. For 3 months, he'd been booking the last slot every Thursday evening, paying in cash that he left in a pristine envelope on the counter, never arriving early or staying late. And for 3 months, I'd been lying to myself about why my pulse quickened when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. The knock came at exactly 6:15. It always did. "Come in," I called, proud of how steady my voice sounded. He entered the way he always did, like he owned the space but was gracious enough not to mention it. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predatory grace that had nothing to do with the injury he claimed brought him here. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face that could have belonged to a Renaissance painting. Sharp jaw, full lips, a small scar above his left eyebrow that I'd traced with my fingers during treatments while pretending it was purely professional curiosity. "Good evening, Emma." His voice was deep, accented Italian, I thought, though he spoke perfect English. "Mr. Rossi," I gestured to the treatment table. "Same as usual, shoulder and upper back. Per favor." He shrugged off his suit jacket, and I tried not to notice how the fabric probably cost more than my monthly rent. Tried not to notice how his dress shirt pulled across his shoulders as he unbuttoned it with practiced efficiency. This was my job. I'd treated hundreds of bodies. There was nothing different about this one, except there was everything different about this one. He settled onto the table face down, and I approached with professional detachment I definitely didn't feel. My hands found the familiar territory of his shoulder blade, feeling for the tension I knew would be there. The man carried stress like armor. "You've been favoring this side more this week," I observed, working my thumbs along the muscle. "What happened?" "Work." The single word was clipped. Final. It was always work. In 3 months I'd learned almost nothing about him. No personal details, no casual conversation, no explanation for the way I sometimes caught him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. But I'd noticed other things. The expensive watch he never removed. The way he tensed when ambulance sirens passed outside. The scars, so many scars, that painted a story across his skin. A knife wound along his ribs. What looked like a bullet graze on his shoulder. Evidence of a life lived dangerously. And the guards. I'd seen them waiting in the parking lot, standing beside blacked-out SUVs, watching the building's entrance with the alertness of men expecting trouble. "Mr. Rossi," I said quietly, my hand still working the knots from his muscles. "What do you really do for work?" His entire body went rigid beneath my touch. The silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. I could feel his breathing change, could sense the war happening behind his carefully controlled exterior. Then he moved, sat up smoothly despite my startled protest, turning to face me with an expression I couldn't read. We were close, too close. I could smell his cologne, expensive and dark. Could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "You don't remember me, do you?" His voice was soft, almost hurt. My heart stuttered. "What?" He stood reaching for his shirt, and I watched as he buttoned it with hands that were completely steady while mine was shaking. When he was dressed, looking every inch the powerful man he clearly was, he finally met my eyes again. "My name is Luca Moretti." The name hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning I didn't understand yet. "And 2 years ago, Emma Cole, you saved my life." The name hit me like a physical blow. Luca. Not Mr. Rossi. Luca, and suddenly, I was back there. 2 years ago. The Children's Hospital Charity Gala, where I'd been working as an on-site medic, a side gig I'd taken for the extra money. Champagne flutes and evening gowns and a string quartet playing in the ballroom while I'd waited in a small office. Bored and checking my phone. Then someone had run in, panicked. There's a man down in the east hallway. He's collapsed. I'd grabbed my kit and run, finding him crumpled against the wall. Dark suit, gasping for breath, one hand clutching his chest. His face had been pale, sweat beading on his forehead, eyes wide with something that looked like terror. I can't breathe, he choked out. I'd dropped beside him, checking his pulse, assessing. Look at me. Focus on my voice. What's your name, Luca? Just that. Just his first name, gasped between struggling breaths. I'd thought it was cardiac. Called 911, started preparing for the worst. But as I'd talked to him, keeping him focused, keeping him present, I'd realized the symptoms weren't quite right. His pulse was elevated, but not dangerously so. His color was returning as he focused on my voice. Panic attack. A severe one, but not the heart attack I'd feared. I'd stayed with him. Talked him through breathing exercises. Held his hand when the paramedics arrived. Even rode with him to the hospital, because he'd looked at me with such vulnerable desperation and whispered, "Please don't leave me alone." At the while doctors ran tests to be safe, we'd talked. Really talked. He'd been charming, self-deprecating about his episode, asking about my life with genuine interest. We'd laughed about the absurdity of meeting during a medical emergency. And when they'd released him around 2 a.m. with a clean bill of health and a recommendation to see a therapist about anxiety, he'd asked if I wanted to take a walk. I should have said no. Should have gone home. Instead, I'd walked through the city with him until dawn painted the sky pink. We'd talked about everything and nothing. He'd told me about losing his father, about the weight of expectations he didn't know how to carry. I'd told him about choosing physical therapy because I liked fixing broken things. At sunrise, standing on a bridge overlooking the river, he'd kissed me. Soft and sweet and full of promise. Then he'd pulled back, cupped my face, and said, "Thank you for tonight." For seeing me. I'd given him my number. Waited for him to call. Never did. Now, standing in my treatment room with the memory crashing over me like a wave, I stared at him. At Luca. At the man who'd vanished without explanation, leaving me with one perfect night and 2 years of trying to forget. You. My voice came out as a whisper. You disappeared. I waited. I thought, I know. Pain flickered across his face. I wanted to call Emma. Every single day I wanted to call, but I couldn't bring you into my world. Not then. Not when everything was chaos and danger and I was barely surviving it myself. So you just decided for me. Anger sparked through the shock. You made that choice without even yes, simple, direct, no excuses. I made that choice because the alternative was watching you get hurt because of me. Because of what I am. And what are you, Luca? I crossed my arms, trying to protect myself from the intensity in his eyes. What are you that's so dangerous? He took a step closer, then another, until we were nearly touching, until I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Have dinner with me, he said quietly. Let me explain everything. Let me tell you the truth I should have told you 2 years ago. Why now? My heart was pounding. Why come back now after all this time? Because I'm finally strong enough to protect you. His hand rose slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. And because I never stopped thinking about you, not for a single day, I should have said no. Should have told him to leave and never come back. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "One dinner. But you tell me everything." His smile was small, grateful, and tinged with something that looked like relief. Everything, he promised. No more secrets. But we both knew that was a lie. The address Luca texted me led to a building I'd passed 100 times without noticing. Unmarked door, no sign, just a discreet gold plate that read Impro in elegant script. A valet appeared the moment Luca's car pulled up. Not the SUV with guards, but a sleek black sedan he drove himself. I wanted tonight to feel normal, he explained, reading my surprise. As normal as possible, given what I need to tell you. The words settled in my stomach like stones. Inside, an elevator with only one button. It carried us up in silence, and I watched Luca's reflection in the polished doors. He was nervous. This powerful, controlled man was actually nervous, and somehow that made everything worse. The doors opened onto a rooftop terrace that stole my breath. The entire city sprawled below us, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. A single table waited in the center, candles already lit, wine breathing in a crystal decanter. We were completely alone. Luca, I turned to him, overwhelmed. How did you even own it? He said it simply, like it was nothing. The restaurant, the building. It's one of my legitimate holdings. One of his holdings. Casual, like everyone owned entire buildings. He pulled out my chair, his hand brushing my shoulder as I sat. The touch sent electricity racing down my spine, and I hated my body for responding to him when my mind was screaming warnings. A waiter appeared from somewhere, pouring wine with practiced elegance before disappearing again. We were alone with the city and the candles and 2 years of unspoken words hanging between us. You said you'd tell me everything. I took a sip of wine for courage. It was excellent, of course. Probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. So tell me. Luca leaned back and I watched him choose his words carefully. My father died 3 years ago. Suddenly, violently, in a way that left no question it was murder. And when he died, I inherited everything. He paused. His businesses, his responsibilities, his empire. What kind of empire? But I already knew. Had known from the moment I'd seen those guards, those scars. The way he moved through the world like danger was a second skin. The kind built on power and fear and activities that exist in the shadows. His eyes never left mine. The Moretti family has controlled territory in this city for 4 generations. Imports, exports, protection, gambling, influence. My father ran it like a kingdom. Now I do. The word he wasn't saying hung in the air between us. Mafia. You're a criminal. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Yes. No denial, no justification. I'm the head of an organized crime family. I make decisions that affect hundreds of lives. I deal with people who would kill without hesitation. And I've done things. He stopped, jaw clenching. I've done things I can never take back. I should have stood up. Should have walked away. Should have been terrified. Instead, I asked, that night at the gala, the panic attack, was it real? Pain flashed across his face. Very real. I'd been in charge for 6 months and I was drowning. The weight of it, the violence, the constant fear that I'd make a wrong choice and people would die. I was at that gala for appearances to play the role of legitimate businessman. He laughed, but it was bitter. Then my chest got tight and I couldn't breathe and I thought I was dying. But I helped you. The memory was vivid now. His hand in mine, his eyes locked on my face like I was an anchor. You saved me, he corrected softly. Not just from the panic attack. You treated me like a person, Emma. Not a title, not a legacy, not a weapon. Just Luca, for those hours. I was just a man talking to a woman who made him feel human again. His hand reached across the table toward mine. I pulled back. The hurt in his eyes was immediate, but he didn't push. Just withdrew his hand, fingers curling into a fist against the white tablecloth. You can't just decide I'm yours, I said quietly. You can't disappear for 2 years, orchestrate these therapy sessions, manipulate circumstances to get close to me, and expect me to just what? Fall into your arms because you've decided it's finally safe? No. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. You're right. I can't decide. I can only ask. His voice dropped lower. Let me earn you, Emma. Give me the chance to prove I'm worth the risk. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I lay in my small apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Luca had said. Organized crime, murder, empire built on fear. And somehow, woven through all of it, a man who'd kept the memory of one perfect night for 2 years. By morning, I'd made a decision. I called in sick to work, something I never did, and spent hours researching. Luca Moretti. The name appeared in society pages, charity events, business acquisitions, always carefully positioned as a legitimate entrepreneur. But between the lines in forums and old news articles, I found whispers, rumors, the Moretti family name attached to investigations that went nowhere. Witnesses who disappeared, politicians who suddenly changed their votes. I was reading about a dock warehouse fire from 2 years ago when my doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Luca stood in my hallway, dressed more casually than I'd ever seen him. Dark jeans, a black Henley leather jacket, but his eyes were tired, like he hadn't slept either. And somehow he looked more dangerous like this, without the armor of expensive suits. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. How do you know where I live? Emma. How long have you been watching me, Luca? The question came out harder than I intended. 2 years? Since that night? Do you have people following me? Cameras? What? His jaw tightened. I needed to know you were safe. That's not an answer. I gripped the doorframe, using it as a barrier between us. That's an excuse. There's a difference. Yes, I've had people watching you. No apology in his voice. Making sure you got home safely, that no one bothered you, that you were okay. I've known every address you've lived at, every job you've worked, every aspect of my life that you decided you had the right to monitor. Anger flooded through me, hot and sharp. You talk about giving me a choice, but you've been controlling my world without my knowledge for 2 years. To protect you. I didn't ask for your protection. My voice echoed in the hallway. I didn't ask to be treated like something fragile that needs to be locked away and guarded. I'm not. I stopped, trying to find the right words, trying to express the suffocation I felt creeping around my throat. Luca stepped closer, and I saw his control fraying at the edges. Say it. I'm not a possession, Luca. I met his eyes steadily. You can't own me. You can't just decide my life needs your intervention and insert yourself into it without permission. That's not protection. That's control. Something broke in his expression. He moved forward, and suddenly we were toe to toe in my doorway, his hands coming up to frame my face with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity burning in his eyes. No. His voice was rough, raw. You're not a possession. His forehead pressed against mine, and I felt him trembling. You're everything. The words came out broken, like a confession he'd been holding back too long. You're not something I own, Emma. You're the only thing I need. It's the only good in a world that's dark and violent and corrupt. You're the reason I survived the last 2 years, knowing you were out there, safe, living your life. You're the light I see when I close my eyes after making decisions that cost people their lives. His thumbs traced my cheekbones, catching tears I didn't realize were falling. I'm not good at this, he continued, voice barely a whisper. I'm not good at asking instead of taking, at trusting instead of controlling. My world doesn't work that way. But for you, he pulled back enough to meet my eyes. For you, I'll try. I'll fail, probably constantly, but I'll try. The vulnerability in his face undid me. 1 month, I heard myself say. You give me 1 month. My rules, my terms. You don't make decisions about my life without asking me first. You don't have people watching me without my knowledge. You treat me like a partner, not a problem to solve. And if I agree? Hope flickered in his eyes. What happens after the month? Then I decide if I can live in your world. I took a shaky breath. If what we have is worth the cost. His smile was small, grateful, and edged with something that looked like fear. Deal. The month began quietly. Almost too quietly. Luca kept his distance physically, but his presence was constant. A text in the morning. Did you sleep well? Coffee delivered to the clinic at noon with a note. Cinnamon on top, just like you like it. Calls in the evening that started as check-ins and stretched into hours of conversation. I learned things about him I'd never expected. He was surprisingly funny, with a dry wit that caught me off guard. He loved old movies, the black and white kind with sharp dialogue and tragic endings. He spoke 4 languages fluently. He'd wanted to be an architect before his father died, designing buildings instead of inheriting an empire. "What would you have built?" I asked one night, curled up on my couch with the phone pressed to my ear. "Something beautiful," he said quietly. "Something that lasted longer than violence." That meant something beyond power. The loneliness in his voice broke my heart a little. I told him things too, about my parents who'd wanted me to be a doctor, how disappointed they'd been when I chose physical therapy instead. About the satisfaction I felt when I helped someone move without pain for the first time in years. About the small joys I'd built my life around: Sunday farmers markets, old bookstores, the coffee shop on 5th Street where they knew my order. "I want to see it," Luca said during our 5th night call. "Your world, the places that make you happy." So we made a plan. Saturday afternoon, the park where we'd walked 2 years ago. Neutral territory, public, normal. I arrived first, waiting on a bench near the fountain. The park was busy. Families with children, joggers, couples walking dogs. Safe, normal. Exactly what I needed. Then I saw him. Walking toward me in jeans and a dark sweater, hands in his pockets, looking almost like a regular person. Almost. Because I noticed the way people unconsciously moved out of his path, responding to something predatory they couldn't quite name. His smile was genuine, warm, and it made him look younger. "Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for not bringing an army." I stood and he laughed. "They're around," he admitted. "Just not obvious." We walked. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd been doing this for years instead of rebuilding something fragile and new. He asked about my week, listened intently as I complained about a difficult patient, made me laugh with a story about his cousin's disastrous attempt at cooking. For an hour I forgot the danger, the empire, the blood on his hands. He was just Luca, and I was just Emma, and we were just 2 people falling for each other in the autumn sunlight. Then the black sedan pulled up alongside the path. Everything changed in a heartbeat. Luca's entire body went rigid, his hand shooting out to grip my arm. Not roughly, but firmly, positioning himself between me and the vehicle. I felt the shift in him, the casual man disappearing, replaced by something cold and deadly. The rear door opened. A man emerged, older than Luca, maybe mid-50s, with silver hair and a face that looked carved from granite. He wore an expensive suit and a smile that never reached his eyes. He spoke in rapid Italian, words I couldn't understand but recognized as hostile from the tone alone. Luca responded in the same language, his voice low and controlled, but I felt the tension radiating from him like heat. The man's eyes slid to me, assessed me, dismissed me. Then said something that made Luca's hand tighten on my arm. "Attento, Moretti," the man said in accented English, his gaze returning to Luca. "Careful. Your father knew better than to show weakness." Then he was gone, sliding back into the sedan, the vehicle pulling away as smoothly as it had arrived. Luca didn't move for a long moment. When he finally turned to me, his expression was carefully controlled, but I could see the fear beneath it. "That was Enzo De Luca," he said quietly. "He controls the North End, and now he knows you exist." The words settled over me like ice water. This wasn't theoretical anymore. The danger wasn't some abstract future threat. I'd just been marked. "We need to leave." Luca's voice was tight, controlled. "Now, Luca." "What, please, Emma?" He was already guiding me toward the parking lot. His hand on my lower back, his eyes scanning constantly. "I'll explain everything, but not here. Not in the open." A car appeared. The black sedan I recognized. It's driven by someone I didn't. Luca opened the back door, waiting until I was inside before sliding in beside me. The moment the doors closed, he gave an address in Italian, and the driver nodded. We drove in silence. I watched Luca's profile, the rigid set of his jaw, the way his hands clenched and unclenched on his thighs. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Talk to me." He turned, and the fear in his eyes shocked me. "Enzo De Luca is one of the 5 families that control this city. It's been testing boundaries since my father died, looking for weakness. And he stopped, jaw clenching. I just showed him my greatest weakness. Me. It wasn't a question. You. His hand found mine, gripping tight. I'm sorry. I thought I had more time before anyone noticed. I thought I could keep you separate, safe. Where are we going? Somewhere I can actually protect you while we figure out what to do next. The estate appeared after 40 minutes of driving, rising from manicured grounds like something out of a movie. High stone walls, iron gates that opened at our approach, security cameras visible at every corner. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. The house itself was modern, all glass and steel and clean lines. Luca led me inside, through rooms that felt more like a museum than a home. Everything was pristine, expensive, and utterly lifeless. You live here. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. I exist here. He poured whiskey from a crystal decanter, handing me a glass before taking one himself. Living requires something more than just surviving from one day to the next. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. Tell me what just happened, I said. In the park, what did Enzo say? Luca drained half his whiskey in one swallow. He asked if I'd gotten soft, if I'd forgotten my father's lessons about attachments being liabilities. Then he commented on how, his voice went dark, how easy it'd be to take. How a physical therapist who walks home alone at night wouldn't even see it coming. Ice flooded my veins. He threatened me. He let me know he could threaten you. Luca's knuckles went white around his glass. That's how it works in my world, Emma. People don't attack directly. They find what matters to you, and they make it clear they can take it away whenever they choose. So what happens now? Instead of answering, he set down his glass and held out his hand. Let me show you something. The part of my life I've been keeping from you. I followed him through the house, down a hallway to a door that required a fingerprint scanner. It opened onto stairs leading down, and my heart started racing. The basement was nothing like I expected. It wasn't a wine cellar or home theater. It was a command center. Multiple screens covered one wall, showing security feeds from what looked like dozens of locations. Maps marked with colored pins covered another. Filing cabinets, computers, a large table with chairs surrounding it. This is where I run the family operations, Luca said quietly, where I make decisions about territories and shipments and how to handle people who step out of line. I moved closer to the screens, trying to process the scope of what I was seeing. Warehouses, street corners, what looked like the interiors of clubs and restaurants. And then my breath caught. One screen showed my apartment building, the entrance, clearly visible. Another showed the street outside my clinic. You're watching me! The words came out flat, emotionless, because I was too shocked to feel anything yet. I'm keeping you safe. He was beside me instantly. Emma, after Enzo, after today, you see why I had to, why I needed to know. How long? I turned to face him. How long have these cameras been there? The guilt on his face was answer enough. 2 years. He'd been watching me for 2 years. 2 years. I repeated the words, trying to make them make sense. You've had cameras on my home, my workplace, watching me for 2 years without my knowledge or consent. To protect you, stop saying that. My voice echoed off the concrete walls. Stop hiding behind protection like it justifies surveillance. Like it justifies controlling every aspect of my life without my permission. Luca's hands clenched at his sides. What would you have me do? Ignore the threats? Pretend you're not in danger just because I want you? I would have you treat me like a human being with agency. I gestured at the screens. This isn't love, Luca. This is obsession. This is... The door at the top of the stairs opened. Heavy footsteps descended, and 3 men appeared. They stopped short when they saw me, surprise flickering across their faces before professional masks slammed into place. Capo, one of them said, his eyes darting between Luca and me. We didn't know you had company. We can come back. No, Luca's voice changed. Went cold, authoritative. The shift was instantaneous and terrifying. Emma, These are my most trusted men. Marco Andretti, my second in command. Gio Russo, head of security. And my cousin, Dante Moretti, my consigliere. Marco was the one who'd spoken, older, maybe 40, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. Gio was built like a wall, all muscle and cold calculation. Dante was younger, closer to Luca's age, with the same dark eyes but a harder edge. They all looked at me like I was a problem they needed to solve. "Gentlemen," Luca continued in that same cold voice, "this is Emma Cole. She's under my personal protection. That means she's under all of our protection. Spread the word. Anyone who touches her answers to me." The threat in those words made my blood run cold. Marco stepped forward, his expression respectful but concerned. "With respect, Luca, we need to discuss the De Luca situation. Enzo made contact today and—" his eyes flicked to me. "Perhaps somewhere more private?" Emma stays. Luca's tone left no room for argument. She deserves to understand exactly what she's in the middle of. Dante moved closer, studying me with unnerving intensity. "She's a civilian. Does she understand what that means? What do we do?" "I'm standing right here," I said sharply. "You can talk to me directly." A ghost of a smile crossed Dante's face. "Fair enough. Dottoressa, do you understand what happens in this room? The decisions we make, the consequences of those decisions?" I'm beginning to— I met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "Then you understand your liability." Marco's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "No disrespect intended, but Enzo saw you with Luca. By tomorrow, every family in the city will know the Moretti boss has found something he cares about. That makes you a target. And targets get people killed." The blunt honesty was somehow worse than threats would have been. Luca moved, positioning himself slightly in front of me. The gesture was protective and possessive all at once. "Then they'll learn what happens when they target what's mine." The temperature in the room dropped. I watched. Luca transformed fully now, the gentle man who'd called me every night disappearing entirely beneath something cold and deadly. This was the crime lord. This was the man who gave orders that ended lives. "We need to handle Enzo before he makes a move," Gio said, pulling out a tablet. "I've already increased surveillance on his territory. We have 3 options. Option 1, Marco interrupted. We send a message. Strong enough that he backs off. Not so strong we trigger open war. Option 2, Dante continued. We negotiate. Offer him something he wants in exchange for staying away from our interests." His eyes cut to me meaningfully. "All of them." Option 3, Gio finished, his voice flat. "We eliminate the threat permanently. Make it clear what happens when people forget their place." They were discussing murder, casually, like it was just another business decision. Enough. My voice cut through their planning, and all 4 men turned to look at me. I was shaking, adrenaline and fear and anger mixing into something volatile. "Emma," Luca started. "No." I stepped back, needing space, needing air. "I need to leave. I need to think. It's not safe. Then have one of your men drive me home." I met his eyes, seeing the conflict there. "But I'm leaving, Luca. Now." For a moment I thought he'd refuse. His jaw clenched, his hands fisted at his sides, every instinct clearly screaming at him to keep me here where he could control the situation. But then something in my expression must have reached him. "Marco will drive you." His voice was tight. "And there'll be security outside your building." Fine. I didn't have the energy to argue about that right now. The drive back was silent. Marco was professional, respectful, asking no questions. When we reached my apartment, I saw them immediately. 2 men in a dark sedan parked across the street. My new shadows. I spent the next week in a haze. I went to work, saw patients, came home. Luca gave me space, though he texted every day. Just checking in, never demanding, always leaving room for me to respond or not. "Are you okay? I miss hearing your voice." "Take all the time you need, I'll wait." I did my own research. Called my friend Jessica, a criminal defense attorney, and asked hypothetical questions about organized crime, protection, what it meant to be involved with someone in that world. Her answers weren't comforting. Hypothetically, she'd said, If someone you knew was dating a mob boss, and I'm hoping this is actually hypothetical, Emma, they'd need to understand there's no middle ground. You're either in or out. And in means accepting that people might die because of decisions he makes. It means looking the other way. It means complicity. The word haunted me. Complicity. But I also couldn't stop thinking about Luca's face when he'd said I was everything. Couldn't forget the loneliness in his voice, the fear in his eyes when Enzo had threatened me. Couldn't ignore the fact that despite everything, the surveillance, the control, the violence, part of me still wanted him. On the 7th night, I finally called. He answered on the first ring. Emma. Just my name, but I heard the relief, the desperation, the hope. I need to see you, I said. We need to talk. I'll come to you. No, neutral ground. That coffee shop on 5th Street. Tomorrow, noon. A pause. Okay. I'll be there. He arrived exactly on time, looking tired but immaculate, in dark jeans and a grey sweater. We got coffee, he paid, though I tried and found a corner table away from other customers. I've been thinking, I started, my hands wrapped around my cup for warmth, about what you said, about what I saw, about what being with you actually means. He waited, tension evident in every line of his body. I can't be locked away, Luca. I can't be someone you hide and guard and make decisions for. If I'm going to try this ant, that's a big if. I need terms. Tell me. His voice was quiet. Whatever you need. I keep my job. My apartment. At least for now. You don't make decisions about my safety or my life without consulting me first. I met his eyes. I need to be a partner, not a possession you protect. That means you trust me with information. You let me understand your world gradually instead of hiding me from it. I watched him struggle, saw his need to control warring with his fear of losing me. And the surveillance? He asked carefully. Removed from my apartment. If you want security nearby, fine, but no more cameras. No more watching without my knowledge. His jaw clenched. That makes you vulnerable. That makes me human. I reached across the table, touching his hand. Luca, I understand you're scared. But you can't protect me from everything. And if you try, you'll suffocate what we could have. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he turned his hand over, lacing our fingers together. 1 month, he said quietly. Give me 1 month to prove I can do this your way. That I can be what you need. And if you can't? His eyes met mine, dark and honest. Then I'll let you go. Because loving you means wanting you happy, even if it's not with me. The month unfolded in a rhythm I didn't expect. Luca kept his promises. The cameras outside my apartment disappeared. When security was necessary, he asked first. There's a meeting with the Calabrese family tonight. Can Marco stay outside your building until I know it's resolved? Always a question, never a demand. And slowly, carefully, he showed me his world. I met the people who depended on him, not just soldiers, but families. The widow whose husband had died in my father's service, Luca explained quietly. I make sure she and her children never want for anything. The restaurant owner whose business had been failing until the Moretti family invested. The dock workers whose union Luca protected from corporate exploitation. I know what you're thinking, he said as we drove away from the community center his family funded, that I'm showing you only the good parts. Are you? Yes and no. His honesty surprised me. This is real, Emma. I do provide for people, protect communities that would be crushed otherwise. But I also collect from businesses that can't afford to say no. I move shipments that aren't exactly legal. I make decisions that sometimes end in violence. He glanced at me. Both things are true. I'm not asking you to ignore the darkness. Just to see that there's more to me than just that. We had normal dates too. Movies where we sat in the back row and he held my hand like a teenager. Dinners at small restaurants where no one knew who he was. A weekend at his coastal property where we walked the beach and talked until sunrise. And he told me about the architecture he'd never get to design. Show me, I said, and he sketched buildings in the sand with a stick, beautiful, soaring structures that would never exist outside his imagination. You should have been an architect, I said softly. I'm needed elsewhere. No bitterness, just resignation. We don't always get to be who we want to be. But there were reminders. Phone calls he'd take in Italian, his voice going cold and authoritative. Nights he'd cancel last minute because of business. The way strangers looked at him, some with respect, some with fear, all with recognition. And through it all, Luca called every night. Sometimes we talked for hours, sometimes just minutes before he had to handle something urgent. But he always called, his voice in the darkness becoming as essential as breathing. What are you thinking? He asked one night, 3 weeks into our month. I was curled on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and I realized I was smiling. I'm falling for you. Again, or maybe still. I'm not sure it ever really stopped, the sharp intake of breath on his end. Then quietly, Emma, I'm scared, Luca. Terrified, actually. But I'm falling anyway. I'll catch you, he promised. I swear I'll catch you. On day 29, I awoke at 3 a.m. to sounds in my apartment. My heart lurched. I grabbed my phone, ready to call for help, when I recognized the silhouette in my bedroom doorway. Luca? I whispered. He was leaning against the frame, and even in the darkness I could see the exhaustion radiating from him. His shirt was partially unbuttoned, his hair disheveled, and there was something in his expression, something raw and haunted. I'm sorry, he said quietly. There was a situation, it's handled now, but, he stopped. I needed to see you to make sure you were safe. I know I should have called first, but come here. He crossed the room and I pulled back the covers. He hesitated only a moment before sliding in beside me, fully clothed, his arms wrapping around me like I was the only solid thing in his world. What happened? I asked, stroking his hair. Nothing I want to bring into this bed. His voice was muffled against my shoulder. Can I just hold you? Yes, we lay there in the darkness, his breathing gradually slowing, the tension leaving his body. And when I woke at dawn, he was asleep in the chair by my window, having moved at some point so he wouldn't impose, still watching over me even in exhaustion. That's when I knew my decision was already made. Day 30 arrived faster than I expected. Luca picked me up at sunset, dressed in a dark suit that made him look every inch the powerful man he was. Where are we going? I asked. Back to where I told you the truth. His hand found mine, it seems appropriate. Imparo. The rooftop terrace. The same table, the same candles, the same view of the city sprawling below us. But everything felt different now. A month ago, I'd been terrified. Now I was just certain. We sat, and Luca poured wine with hands that weren't quite steady. Your month is up, he said quietly. I promised you could walk away after 30 days, and I'll keep that promise. If you want to leave, Emma, I'll make sure you're protected regardless. I'll have security watching from a distance, enough to keep you safe, but not enough to intrude on your life. He paused. You'll never see me again if that's what you choose. Luca, let me finish. He took a shaky breath. I need to say this. I need you to understand what you'd be walking away from, and what you'd be choosing if you stay. I nodded, my heart pounding. Being the head of this family is the loneliest thing I've ever experienced, he said, his voice raw. I make decisions that affect hundreds of lives. I carry the weight of their safety, their futures, their families. I deal with men who would kill me without hesitation if they sensed weakness. And I've done things, his jaw clenched. I've given orders that resulted in deaths. I've hurt people. I've become exactly what my father was. Maybe worse, because at least he was born into this world. I chose it. You didn't choose it, I said softly. It chose you. Maybe. His eyes met mine. But I stayed. And staying means I'm complicit in everything the Moretti family represents. The violence, the corruption, the fear. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine but not touching. If you choose me, Emma, you're choosing that too. You're choosing to love someone who can never be fully clean, who will always have blood on his hands. I know. Do you? The question was desperate. Do you really understand what it means? The danger, the moral compromise, the fact that I'll always be looking over my shoulder wondering if today's the day someone decides to take what's mine. I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. I spent this month watching you, Luca. Really watching. And yes, I see the darkness. I see the violence lurking beneath the surface. I see the empire built on fear and power. His expression shuttered, preparing for rejection. But I also see the man who calls me every night just to hear my voice, who remembered I hate roses but loves sunflowers, who funds community centers and protects families and carries the weight of hundreds of lives like it's his personal burden. I squeezed his hand. You're not just the monster, Luca. You're also the man who fell asleep in my chair because you needed to know I was safe. Who sketches buildings in the sand that will never be built? Who looks at me like I'm the only good thing in a dark world? Emma. My name broke on his lips. I'm choosing you, I said simply. The darkness and the light. The empire and the man. All of it. He stood abruptly, pulling me up and into his arms so fast I gasped. His kiss was desperate, grateful, claiming. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I love you, he whispered. God, I love you so much it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me, I whispered back. Because I love you too. 6 months later, we married in a private ceremony at his estate. I wore simple white and carried sunflowers. He wore a dark suit and looked at me like I was a miracle. You're my redemption, he said in his vows, voice rough with emotion. My light in the darkness. And I'll spend every day earning the gift of your love. You're my choice, I replied through tears. Every day, in the light and the darkness, you're my choice. Years passed. I still worked as a physical therapist at a state-of-the-art clinic Luca built, where I could help people without worrying about insurance or payment. He still ran his empire, but came home to me every night. When people asked how we met, we smiled and said, she helped me with an old injury. It wasn't a lie. Some wounds just take longer to heal, and some loves are worth every risk, every compromise, every choice to stand in the darkness with someone and call it home. He was the empire, I was the light. Together we were everything.